Welcome to Cardinals Cover 2 with Craig Grialou and Mike Jurecki. Cardinals Cover 2 is brought to you by Arizona Cardinals Podcasts. Visit azcardinals.com/podcasts. From the Dignity Health Arizona Cardinals Training Center, here's Craig Grialou and Mike Jurecki.
So, quick question for you, MJ. How do you handle bad days? What gets you over the hump? Is there a go-to activity, piece of food, anything you watch specifically?
I
work
really
out?
don't have
Nothing?
a lot of bad days.
Oh, there we go.
I try to make them positive. Positive thoughts, positive energy.
Well,
Negativity brings me down.
if you're Sean Payton,
Yeah.
it's ice cream and Netflix.
Oh, I see where you're going there. I would say chicken wings and probably beer
All right.
or pizza.
That's fair enough. Yeah, Saints head coach Sean Payton finally addressed the media in his end-of-season media session with the New Orleans media only about a week and a half after the NFC Championship game. But as he said, he was finally out of the cave, and that's how he processed his grief over, he said, about 2 or 3 days following that contest.
Eating ice cream.
Yes, and watching a lot of television.
Yeah, well, that will keep, listen, clearly
You got to have something. You need some outlet.
Yes, and he probably didn't need people telling him, you guys got jobbed. He knew it. He lived it. The thing is, I don't know if they were the same team in the second half. Didn't seem like offensively. Maybe they were more balanced and they weren't relying just on outscoring teams. But they were the number one seed, and they thought this was set up for them. And, I would have signed up for a Drew Brees, Tom Brady Super Bowl. Nothing against Sean McVay and Jared Goff because they've done a wonderful job in a short amount of time. But that would have been an interesting Super Bowl. Guys, Brady 41, Brees close to 40. Maybe their one's the last hurrah. I just thought it would have been a great matchup. Coaching-wise, you have a veteran coach in Sean Payton and Bill Belichick. Unfortunately, it didn't work out, but that was the talk of the Super Bowl today because the commissioner finally addressed the media.
Yeah, we'll get into all of that as we take off on this Wednesday edition of Cards Cover 2 as we come to you from the Dignity Health Arizona Cardinals Training Center. And here's what's ahead on the show. One possible solution to avoid another NFC Championship game controversy. How the Rams might hold the key to the Cardinals' future success. Josh Rosen hits the beach, but not to relax. And, of course, your questions via social media using the hashtag CardsCover2, hashtag CardsCover2 with the number 2 to get involved in the show here on this Wednesday as we come to you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 3 p.m. Again, here from the Cardinals complex in Tempe. The news of the day, and MJ alluded to it, much of it originating from Atlanta, site of Super Bowl 53. Commissioner Roger Goodell, yes, he finally broke his silence. Held his annual State of the League address. The topics included the Raiders' future and where they're going to play in 2019. That needs to be done ASAP because let's not forget the schedule comes out in what, April?
Yes.
And you need to figure out where the Raiders are going to be playing, not on the Cardinals schedule, but are we traveling to Oakland? Are we traveling to San Diego? Are we traveling somewhere else? So that's certainly a topic that needs to be answered real fast.
Yeah, and Sam Farmer, who's covered the Los Angeles teams over the years, works for the LA Times. He basically said we got 3 teams in California that are playing at temporary stadiums.
Yeah, talking
and
about
that's
the
where
Chargers,
we are.
Rams,
now, the LA didn't have the NFL for 21 years. I thought, the NFL needed LA more than they needed football. But yeah, that's something they're going to have to work on. It sounds like, though, Sam Boyd Stadium's been mentioned. ASU played their bowl game there. They would have to do a huge upgrade in a short amount of time. I don't think it's feasible, considering I think UNLV plays there and they host that bowl game. But it sounds like they want to stay in the Bay Area. So now do they call the Giants at AT&T Stadium, or do they ask the Niners? Now, if you go and play in Santa Clara, you're talking about 16 football games throughout the course of the year. 8, obviously, Raiders and 8 49ers. I guess somebody will throw them a bone. I thought possibly go down and play at Qualcomm. Don't know if that's an option. We know the Raiders fan base, Los Angeles, obviously Vegas, and then the Bay Area, and they're all over the country. So I think they'll be really supportive when they go to Vegas. Could be a weekend trip, but it'd be interesting to see where they end up. But right now, they're trying to figure it out, and the reason why they were having this conversation is because they were told basically you can get out of here when you want.
Yeah, I still think they're trying to work things out with Oakland, at least for one more season. But that is certainly at the forefront of some of the discussion amongst the NFL owners as far as what to do with the Raiders in 2019.
Yeah, it'll work out fine for Kyle Murray. He can play baseball there, and he can also play football for the Raiders.
That was very well done. Kyler Murray did go back and forth. Okay.
Yeah, he can go back and forth.
From one locker room to the other locker room.
Dual player like Deion Sanders.
International play, also a hot topic as well. The league continues to look at the possibility of a team in London. The league is committed to Mexico City. The game last season had to be moved, but this season the Chiefs and Chargers will meet up south of the border, and China is, quote, priority market, unquote, according to Goodell, which is certainly interesting. That you're looking at, not just a game, but maybe other activities in a market that is very, very large, and the NBA has jumped in with both feet with that market because that is heavy NBA territory, but certainly the NFL would like to get a portion of that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that they, want to promote. I mean, obviously the NBA is so different because they have a lot of international players playing in the NBA. We don't have as much in the NFL. So, I mean, I still think, London's going to be an option. Now, there's more facilities in London than just the normal Wembley field. So there's other options out there, and we know that teams, either if you hosted a Super Bowl or you're still trying to find out where your future is going to be, we know where the Chargers and the Rams are going to be. They're going to be in their new stadium, and now we know the Raiders are moving to Oakland. So at some point, the teams that are getting new stadiums, you're going to have to give up a home game, and then in teams that are hosting a Super Bowl, you're probably going to have to give up a home game because the NFL is bringing a lot of revenue there. But I've always thought Jacksonville could be an option. Not a great market for them, a small market. Now, they haven't helped themselves over the last year. They were on the cusp of possibly getting to the Super Bowl last year in the AFC Championship game. So I've always thought maybe they can host a few games there, but clearly the NFL is in demand. I mean, we're probably going to see 115 million people watching this game on Sunday on CBS. So it's nice to be wanted, and I'm sure Goodell's going to try to do everything in his power to kind of reach out to some of these other countries, including China, and that question was asked today, and he kind of is for it, but we just don't know the time frame.
Yeah, the league is very, very healthy and wants to get more international,
more money
in the years to come. But much of Goodell's 47-minute press conference centered around the NFC Championship game and what happened at the end of that game, the non-call on what was an obvious pass interference penalty. Yes, it should have been called, Goodell admitted. He understands the frustration of Saints fans, yet at the same time, officials are human. They make mistakes. Here is the commissioner.
We have worked very hard to bring technology in to try to make sure we can do whatever's possible to address those issues. But technology is not going to solve all those issues. The game is not officiated by robots. It's not going to be. But we have to continue to go down that path. Go back specifically on Sunday night, I think Coach Payton spoke to Al Riveron, our head of officials, immediately after the game. Al told him that that's a play we want to have called. I have spoken to him. Troy Vincent, the head of football operations, have spoken to him. I've spoken to Mrs. Benson. Coach has also spoken to the competition committee, Rich McKay, the chairman. So there's been a great deal of communication and making sure that they understand that. As far where we can go, we will look again at instant replay. There have been a variety of proposals over the last, frankly, 15, 20 years of should replay be expanded. It does not cover judgment calls. This was a judgment call. The other complication is that it was a no call. And our coaches and clubs have been very resistant, and there has not been support to date about having a replay official or somebody in New York throw a flag when there's no flag. They have not voted for that in the past. It doesn't mean that we won't. It's something that we're going to put to the competition committee, see if there's an answer to that. But the reality is that's been at least an opposition philosophically for many clubs.
Goodell's like, what do you want from me, blood? Now, I do think now that we have more information, and I thought it was important for the NFL, even behind the scenes, Alberto Riveron, who's in charge of officiating, and he's in New York, and I think they'll be on location this week because you don't need to have them in New York. You can move the operation to the Falcon Stadium. I think that Goodell's probably not happy with Sean Payton telling the media that he spoke to Alberto Riveron. And I think Sean Payton was so upset, he wanted clarification what happened. Clearly, they missed the call. I just wonder, looking back, is there another procedure? Because Alberto Riveron is in charge of the officiating. He could have overruled that based on, but it's a judgment call. So, and it's not replayable or reviewable right now. So I wonder if the commissioner was kind of upset with that it got out that he did speak and they did admit admission of guilt. And maybe that's why he wanted to wait until he was going to speak, to kind of let them think about, maybe you shouldn't have mentioned that. You can be upset about the call, but I don't know if he should have told everyone out there that he did talk to the official when it comes to officiating.
Yeah, two things here is, one, you mentioned it, a judgment call. So there's not a rule you can go back and look at and say, okay, did we call it according to what the rule states? And then the other thing is there was no call made. And how do you go back when a call isn't made? And that's something that, whether that gets discussed within the competition committee or not, is a different discussion here. But to go back and say, no, that was a call, well, that's a judgment call too. I understand It was an obvious miss, but now you're opening up a Pandora's box, if you will, on, okay, how far does this go?
All right, let's go back to the Cardinals-Packers playoff game that went to overtime. Not the one with Larry, the shuffle pass to score.
Okay.
Go back to the one where Aaron Rodgers, and he was being rushed by
I know where you're going with
Mike
this.
Adams and Carlos. Face mask. They didn't call it.
And that one is a rule, but if you don't see it, that's a non-call. What do you do? Hey, let's go back. Look, there is no such thing as a perfectly played game in any sport. Officials make mistakes. Players make mistakes.
That's the human
element.
Coaches
make mistakes. And that is what the beauty of sports is,
yes.
that human element. Now, we would all love to see it get to as close to perfection as possible and not have an egregious mistake. And that is why this is getting so magnified, is because it was so obvious. And two, well, it was a huge game and a huge opportunity that the Saints missed out on in getting to the Super Bowl.
That's why I love sports. I mean, people are like, what's some of your favorite reality shows? Watching the NFL on Sunday, we think we know what's going to happen. We have no idea, and usually games come down to the last 4 or 5 plays or the last 3 or 4 minutes. That's reality sports right there, and you're talking about the human element. When you talk about judgment calls, it's how one sees it, okay? Does one see it a little bit different than the other? Maybe they need to get their eyes checked. I don't know, but we all look at the same thing, but I think we have different feelings and a different lens when we do look at things.
Absolutely, and Goodell did say the competition committee, as they do every single year, will look at this and try to maybe expand replay or at least try to do a better job, because Goodell wants to make sure that there is, or find out if there is, a better solution.
And I want to say about our officials, they're men and women of high integrity, and they're people that when people are talking about officiating, they know that's not the outcome they want. And so I know they're disappointed also, but they work hard to make sure we improve officiating, and I think they do an excellent job. But as I say, they're human. I think the committee will definitely consider this. Is always what happens in the competition committee is not just considering a solution, but what are the unintended consequences to that solution. And that's part of this issue of not wanting a replay official or an official back in New York throwing a flag on a no call. If that happens, you could have multiple fouls on a play that people are looking at. Now, there's solutions for this, and I'm not suggesting that. That's what the committee has to focus in on. What are the solutions? What are the unintended consequences? And come up with something that we think can keep the competitive nature of our game, but also improve officiating.
That's key there, that phrase, unintended consequences, because everyone is up in arms right now and, okay, let's change it. Let's do this. Okay, well, what happens if you do this? What happens next? What is the result, the trickle down, if you will? If you allow this to happen, then A, B, and C potentially could happen. The other interesting aspect of this is Sean Payton is a member of that competition committee, so you know it's going to be brought up. It's going to be discussed. And when it is next, when the owners are in town for the annual league meetings in Phoenix, enough time will have passed. You know, emotions won't be nearly as high, I wouldn't think. I'm not a Saints fan, so I don't know that for sure. But maybe things will have happened to where, okay, let's no go this far. Let's just go halfway and see if that works to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
Yeah, normally those competition committee meetings will start at the combine.
Okay.
And you got everyone there. You got
That's
obviously
true.
ownership. You have head coaches, GMs. You have the front office there from the National Football League. And then that's when it'll be discussed. And then you wonder how much will get tabled and then what can actually be brought to a vote. Now, before you get there, they got to figure out A, B, and C and how this is going to affect the speed of the game. And then when you get to the owners' meetings, it's going to be here in Phoenix at the Biltmore coming up in March. That's when they could take a vote. And if they don't feel like they don't have 24 out of 32 votes because you need 75% of the ownership, then they could table it until July, just like they did when it came to the helmet-to-helmet rule. They kind of were floating it out there, kind of an air balloon was the reaction. And then we got clarification once we got the training camp and the officials came in and spoke to everyone. So usually combine, that's when you plant the seed. Everyone has to try to rewrite the rule, get to the owners' meetings, more stuff there, and then obviously a vote possibly before the season starts.
Now, one possible solution that's been brought up, and I know Mike Pereira, the Fox NFL analyst, former referee in charge of referees for the NFL, has brought this up, and that is adding another official, an eighth official, maybe not so much on the field, but in the booth as part of that crew to kind of have another set of eyes from up above. Goodell was asked about that solution.
I don't think adding an official is an answer to all the issues, and to particularly this issue. We have evaluated an eighth official for many years. It's on the competition committee agenda. It has been for several months. And so we will explore that. But I think that in and of itself is not just going to be a simple, that will avoid all mistakes. Again, adding an eighth official is one more human. One more human that will make mistakes like all the rest of us.
You know, I don't know if he understood the question because we're talking, I don't know if you could put an eighth official on the field. It's crowded as it is. You have a line judge, side judge, back judge. You have your referee. It's more about putting in the booth so if they see something, they can have a direct line to Alberto Riveron in New York, and then they can also talk to the on-field referee to kind of, maybe this wouldn't have happened. Maybe if they, one thing that stunned me, Craig, was after that non-call, even if it was close, whether it was helmet-to-helmet, pass interference, why didn't the crew huddle up? Usually you see that, and then they have a scrum, and then they break from it, and one official, because one official, he had his hand on the flag, didn't throw it, though. The other official felt like it wasn't a penalty. So I just wonder why they didn't huddle up. But the eighth official would be in the booth. He would be your buffer. He would be your go-to guy to New York and the official on the field. And if it takes a couple of minutes, so be it. Get the call right.
Another solution, and this has been reported by ESPN's Adam Schefter from this morning, as far as how to deal with potential missed calls during the course of a game. And this is a plan, in Schefter's words, quote, would allow limited coaches challenges for incorrect judgment calls that also include a penalty or time run off if the coach is wrong. In other words, as you see with challenges, if you challenge a play and the play is not overturned, you lose a timeout. Here, you would be able to challenge a judgment call, but if after review the officials come back and say, no, it's not clear, it's not concise, and we're going to keep the play as is, okay, well, now the penalty is, well, you've just lost X amount of seconds or whatever. And, of course, if you're driving late in the first half or late in the ball game, 10-second runoff, 30. I mean, I have no idea what it is, but it would allow for challenges for judgment calls because that would be new, but there would be a penalty if it is not upheld.
I would think
overturned.
If this comes to fruition where you're allowed to throw a challenge flag on maybe one judgment play, okay? Again, we'll get the particulars. Maybe they'll word a little bit different. If it's a non-call and you want to obviously subject the challenge, I would think a lot of them would happen in the fourth quarter. You would not burn that.
Absolutely not.
Because we know scoring plays and turnovers are automatically challenged. We know last 2 minutes of the game and half, they're challenged. You would not waste that until the final quarter. In other words, you wouldn't waste it in the first quarter. And if it's a scoring play or a turnover, or listen, they can call holding on every play. They can call PI, offense or defensive pass interference, the majority of the game if they're throwing the ball 40 or 50 times. But I would think coaches, if they want to use that, and you are rolling the dice if you're wrong based on, if they're going to take time off the clock, and we don't know that. But I would think that you would do that. In this case, Sean Payton could have done that at that point in time.
Although right now, inside of 2 minutes, you're not allowed to do it. It's from the booth only. Now maybe that changes.
And it was a judgment call, which is not reviewable.
Yeah, and I wonder if also because, and you hear this from players, because at the end of games, players play, bad plays get broken down, dissected, and we don't hear much publicly about how the officials did. The NBA, every single night or the next day, comes out with its last 2 minutes on plays that were correct, plays that were incorrect. Not that it's going to change the course, but it does hold these officials accountable publicly. What happens behind closed doors, I don't know. I'm not privy to that, but I just wonder if more accountability on a Sunday night, a Monday morning, or a Monday night, Al Riveron goes on NFL Network and says, this was correct, this was incorrect, as opposed to waiting until Friday when sometimes those videos get released as far as what did and did not happen, but to get on it quickly. And I think that's what upset people here, is because you didn't hear from anyone. It was all hearsay. It was from Sean Payton's side. No one from the league office publicly said anything or had a written statement. I'm not saying they should or shouldn't, but that's one thing that potentially could alleviate some of this. But again, you're not going to change what happened because there is no such thing as perfection. And I'll say this, as far as again, I'm not a Saints fan, that play, that call, did not cost the Saints the ball game. It was tied with 1:45 left to go. Overcome that and come away with a victory. Saints were unable to do that.
Well, you can blame Sean Payton for lack of clock management. He threw the ball twice. And
called a timeout, too.
Yes, and then Drew Brees, and again, I was rooting for him. I wanted to see Brady Brees Super Bowl. He threw an interception in overtime. Now, what was interesting today, according to the rule book, okay, we have rules for a reason, right? In the rule book, it says the commissioner has the power. Now, this would have to happen like after the game. You would have to put both teams back on the field, go back to that play, call the foul. He has the authority and the power to say, we're going to replay the game from that point on. He said he would never do that.
And mainly because he threw out, it was a judgment call, not something that was
egregious.
Yeah, and a penalty was thrown or not thrown because of the way the rule states. But on a judgment call, it's a little bit different. But it's certainly not going to go
anyway. You would have
anyway.
thought the commissioner would have the power, but he's not going to use it.
Well, then again, it's Pandora's box.
Sure.
How many times do you do it? And every fan base is going to want, hey, why don't this play or this call? Why isn't that reviewed or replayed?
Well, I mean, you would see it towards the end of the game, right? Because Hail Mary, he grabbed, obviously those pass interference, and then players in their locker room, they're celebrating. One's disappointed. They're taking off their pads. They're getting ready for the speech. Oh, come back out.
Yeah.
Doesn't work that way.
One more from Goodell on how the missed call was handled almost 2 weeks ago now.
Over our history, unfortunately, we have had officiating errors and other factors that have been a lot of focus and news, but the game of football is played on the field, and they're played by humans, they're coached by humans, and they're officiated by humans. And that's what our game is.
It's sometimes based off mistakes. You win, you lose, sometimes good luck, sometimes bad luck in the case of mistakes, and some bad luck hit the Saints, and now the Rams are enjoying their time in Atlanta for Super Bowl 53. As we come to you here on this edition of Cards Cover 2 from the Dignity Health Arizona Cardinals Training Center, broadcasting in our Bose QC35s, Craig Grialou and Mike Jurecki still ahead. Your questions via social media using the hashtag CardsCover2, hashtag CardsCover2. But right now, when we talk about the Super Bowl and specifically the Rams here in the Super Bowl, this, by the way, MJ, fourth time in 7 years that the NFC West is represented in the Super Bowl. The 49ers started the run back in 2013. That seems like an awfully long time ago considering the number of coaches the 49ers have gone through since 2013. Then the Seahawks made back-to-back trips in 2014 and 2015, and now the Rams here in 2019, easily outside of the Patriots and what they've done, the best representation amongst all divisions, the NFC West, not counting the Patriots and their run in the AFC East, but certainly what the Rams did here in 2019 and how they got here in 2019 is something worth talking about, because the Cardinals could certainly look at how the Rams got here and say, okay, here is the blueprint, if you will. Now let's go about and follow that, or at least somewhat the similar pathway to get to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and this is something we're going to look at. I'm not so much into comparing Cliff Kingsbury to Sean McVay. I mean, there's not a lot of Sean McVays out there. It's just it's different personnel. It's going to be possibly a little bit different play calling. So I'm not going to get fixated on who's the next Sean McVay. Let him enjoy it. Of course, only 33 years coaching in the Super Bowl. He'll be the youngest head coach to win a game like that coming up on Sunday night. All right, so the way I look at the NFL, to me, you fill holes and needs in free agency. So that's March, okay? You build the belly of your football team in April, and that's the draft. And that's where you got to hit on the guys in the draft, because that's where you have to coach them up. You own their rights 3, 4, 5 years, and they become part of your core moving forward. So that's the way I would build a football team, and I think you see that, because we could sit here and talk about the draft to a blue in the face, but the first thing that comes up is free agency. And if you follow Steve Keim, what he's done here, whatever they don't do in free agency, they have a tendency to adjust in the draft. Now, I do think they're going to have to double up at certain positions: wide receiver, offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, possibly corner. So they have enough needs going in. But that's, to me, free agency is good. We can give you some examples. Andrew Whitworth obviously did a really good job with the Rams. The Giants wanted to offer him a contract, but they didn't, so he went to L.A. He was a great free agent pickup. Obviously, Chandler Jones was a trade. So there's different ways you can build a roster. It's free agency, draft, and trade. So I went back, and Craig actually printed this up for me, how the 2018 Los Angeles Rams were built. Now, they had a lot of draft picks this year. We'll get into some of the particulars, but you pointed out, and this is outstanding, and this is one of the reasons why they're playing this weekend. 2014, they draft Aaron Donald, I want to say 13th overall in the first round. Okay, he could have been the first overall pick. They get LaMarcus Joyner in the second round. 2015, coming off a torn ACL, they draft Todd Gurley. 2016, they move up and get the first pick in the draft. They draft Jared Goff. So in 3 years, you talk about franchise players, game changers, playmakers, Donald, Joyner, Gurley, and Goff. Now, for Arizona, a little bit different. Obviously, the Cardinals had some success winning 50 games in 5 years. In that same time frame, in the first round, DJ Humphries, Marcus Golden, I like this draft class, David Johnson, Rodney Gunter. Nelson didn't pan out. Robert Nkemdiche, right now, you got to say he hasn't panned out. And then you go Hassan Reddick, at least he's starting. I love the Budda Baker pick. I'm not crazy about the Chad Williams pick. So you can just compare what they've done. Now, what the Rams have done, and Stan Kroenke, when he found out that the renewal rate was less than 30%, he fired Jeff Fisher, and he got a $16 million buyout. This is what they did in the offseason. They went out and traded for Brandon Cooks, starter. They went out and traded for Marcus Peters, starter. They went out and traded for Aqib Talib, starter. They got Darius Williams off the waiver wire from Baltimore, and they made a late trade to get Dante Fowler. So that's 5 players there, and they've made 9 total trades and waiver claims. So they have 26 drafted players on the roster, okay? 18 free agents, and they've done a job bringing in guys like C.J. Anderson, Sam Shields, Ndamukong Suh.
Anderson kind of fell on their lap.
It did, but it had an injury.
Well, yeah, and he's performed very well.
Roby Coleman, Robert Woods, Andrew Whitworth. So that's how the Rams have built this roster. Now, obviously, they're moving into a new building, and they got to sell those personal seat licenses at $85,000 a pop. Now, as for the Cardinals, they have 21 draft picks still on the roster between trades and waiver claims. And let's give them credit for DJ Swearinger and Farrell Cooper. That's 6 total with the Jones trade. And then free agent-wise, they put a lot of guys on IR. So you have to build your team and the belly of your football team in the draft.
Well, and you have to be able to hit on those because that's what the Rams did with Donald, Gurley, and Goff. Those are franchise players. Those are all pro players right now. And the Cardinals, during that same time frame, have they hit on some of their draft picks? I would say they found maybe starters. I don't know if you would say DJ Humphries is a franchise left tackle. I'm not prepared to do it because he hasn't been healthy enough. And then you look at Kim Dichie, again, not healthy, productive enough. Hassan Reddick, I'm going to give Reddick a pass because he's had how many different defensive coordinators, how many different positions in his time in the NFL, but you're not seeing any game changers on this roster as far as what the Cardinals have done within the draft. They've come up and come away with good players, but nowhere near the caliber of a Donald or Gurley. Now, the change here could be the addition of Josh Rosen, and that's where you see the equal with the Jared Goff. First year, learning experience, get bounced around literally.
Didn't win a single game.
No. But you gain that experience, and we're all hoping that Rosen now takes the same type of leap in the second year as did Goff.
And what they do, they went on and got an offensive-minded offensive coordinator. He hasn't been a head coach before, McVay. Cardinals went a little bit different. They went the college route, who's been a head coach before and a play caller. So, Larry Fitzgerald, first-round pick still on the roster. Patrick Peterson, first-round pick still on the roster, both playing at a high level. And then Daniel Buchanan, he was a first-round pick. The Cardinals moved down. They were picking 20th that year. They went 29. They ended up getting John Brown in the third round along with Kareem Martin. So we didn't mention those guys. We just went through 3 drafts and how you compare it to where the Rams are, and you could see why they've been successful, and that's the reason we're playing on Sunday.
And I'll give Kym the credit as well because the acquisition of Chandler Jones for essentially a first-round draft pick in Jonathan Cooper, and that certainly has paid off dividends. That might be your Aaron Donald equivalent, still in his prime. So you've got your quarterback, you've got your defensive lineman, and I'll even throw in Patrick Peterson still playing at a high level. David Johnson, can he get back to that level we saw a couple of years ago? Now all of a sudden you're seeing the makings of a roster, but the key here is that Rosen, if he is able to perform and be that excellent quarterback of the future, you've got him on a rookie contract, meaning he's, for lack of a better word, he's cheap. And that's what the Rams were able to do. You've got and the Seahawks too with Russell Wilson. You've got someone who's not going to take a whole lot of cap space, so you can be aggressive in free agency, which the Rams this past season were aggressive in. And Ndamukong Suh, Sam Shields, C.J. Anderson, and that was mid-season or late season as far as the acquisition.
Look at those
for
trades
them.
though.
Yeah,
Cook starter, Peter starter, Aqib Talib starter, and these guys are playmakers. Like you're going to hear these guys' names come on Sunday.
And this was a season in which the Rams all pointed to.
Yep.
Because some of these guys are on one-year deals or expiring contracts because if they didn't reach the Super Bowl, the season was going to be a failure.
Well, I thought, can you imagine going 2 years in a row with the best offensive team, and we'll put the Chiefs in this year, but the Rams have been more consistent? If Sean McVay did not win a playoff game, if Jared Goff, because they lost to the Falcons last year, and they thumped the Cowboys. They ran for 273 on them with Gurley and Anderson. But if they would have lost that game, we would have started to wonder, is this a regular season team built that can't do it in the postseason? I think they proved us wrong by winning on the road against New Orleans.
And because sometimes in the postseason, what happens? The game slows down. You need more defense, maybe less scoring, and that was the concern with the Rams and the Chiefs. Could you change because the game does change? We don't think it does, but it does change when you get to the postseason because all of a sudden it slows down, defenses pick up, and you also need solid special teams as well.
Yeah, and another guy that's really come along, Roger Saffold. He was a second-round pick in 2010. They get Michael Brockers in 2012, and then Greg Zuerlein in the 6th round. So you got to give Les Snead and at the time Jeff Fisher a lot of credit, and that's where the Cardinals – they have to stack back-to-back drafts. Okay, they did a great job last year. Now, granted, they didn't have a lot of picks, but we saw those rookies play from day one until the end of the year. Got valuable mental reps. They got to stack another good draft. And there's going to be pressure because they got the first pick in every single round, and you got to make sure You get the right guy. Now, it's a crapshoot. We watch these guys for 3 years, and we still don't know how they're going to project. But drafting a player, you're projecting what he's going to do at the next level. And I'm encouraged and I'm excited to see how it all shakes out.
And remember what Steve Keim said back when Cliff Kingsbury was introduced on January 9th. When you have that young quarterback, then the next step is developing that quarterback, and then you can do what the Rams do or did, be more aggressive in free agency. But Keim mentioned the key in all of this is Josh Rosen.
I think it was an important piece of the puzzle. I mean, it is a quarterback-driven league, and there's no doubt through my research, when you look at the young quarterbacks in the National Football League, and I think there's 5 of them under 3 years or less that are having success, and all of those guys are coached by offensive play callers. And a few of those guys actually were not the primary play callers prior to their head coaching experience. So, there's no doubt that that's where the trend is going. So that was just a piece of the puzzle. But to take it a step further, the fact that I've seen Cliff on the grass, I've seen him coach up close and personal at Texas Tech, the way he's developed a lot of young quarterbacks, not only developed them, but identified them through the recruiting process, to me was certainly a plus.
Going to be interesting to keep an eye on how that relationship between Kingsbury and Rosen develops, not just on the field, but off the field, because as you've mentioned several times, NJ, it's going to be Kingsbury, it's going to be Tom Clements, the two prominent voices that are going to be in Rosen's ear.
Yeah, and, obviously being the head coach last year, Steve Wilkes, I mean, he obviously had input. He didn't want to throw him to the fire earlier than he had expected. Obviously, it was lack of production and maybe the play caller, Mike McCoy. So he had Wilkes, McCoy, Leftwich, and then at some point, I'm sure, Jason Michael, I was told when they were game planning, it was McCoy and Jason Michael, so Michael was involved. Hopefully this go around, you're only going to have 2 voices in a year. The old saying is you can't have too many chefs in the kitchen, otherwise, everything doesn't taste good. Well, in this case, you'll have Tom Clements, the passing coordinator, and then the quarterback's coach, and then obviously the head coach, who is the play caller. So to me, that's the perfect triangle the Cardinals need.
Cards Cover 2 continues here from the Dignity Health Arizona Cardinals Training Center as we broadcast in our Bose QC35s on this Wednesday afternoon. Speaking of Rosen, before we hear from the Bird Gang, let's hear from Rosen, and it's not about football. Last weekend, he was at Daytona Beach in Florida for a beach cleanup with 4Ocean.
Close to my heart because I grew up at the beach, and it's just always been something that I've cared about and been in the back of my mind.
A bunch of little, call them microplastics. Yeah. I was broken up little plastics from, I guess, bigger things like water bottles and stuff, and little birds and animals. Kind of eat them thinking it's food.
Environmentalism and conservation has always been sort of present in our household. My mom has always taught us to recycle and pick up after ourselves, and I grew up at the beach, so sort of taking care of the ocean and sort of the marine wildlife conservation and everything has always been sort of in my life and sort of in schooling as well, so it's something that definitely does matter to me and my family as well. It's a bit intimidating just to kind of, go out on the beach and pick up trash on your own. I think the sense of community that 4Ocean has sort of built with a lot of these guys that actually are traveling all around the country to following 4Ocean around like a groupie almost, going to all their cleanups. So I think that they sort of tapped into something, and it's a lot more comfortable to come out and partake in something like this as a community. I think the off seasons, this is what this stuff is all about, and sort of exploring your inner passions and what you want to do and how you want to leave a mark on this earth.
The environment certainly is something that Rosen has his eye on and is important for him. 4Ocean, by the way, sponsors events where volunteers remove trash. If you're interested in more information, go to 4ocean.com, and that's with the number 4. Rosen, by the way, is also planning to spend part of his offseason going back to UCLA, going to school, also working out in football, but going back and being a student where he can give his mind a little bit of a break from football.
Yeah, and we had Christian Kirk on the show last week, and he talked about, at some point, and, he's ahead of schedule on his rehab, that they would like to start throwing the ball around, get on the grass. And so that's encouraging. And then hopefully at some point they'll get the playbook as we get a little bit deeper into the spring here. And that's where it starts. I mean, because, Kingsbury and his staff, they've been working, I'm sure they already have their playbook. And that's the good news. They don't have to start from scratch. They got pro concepts, college concepts, and then we use the word mesh. So that should be a quicker process. And then you go to the offensive line coach, Sean Kugler, his blocking schemes. And then you go to the running backs coach in Saxon, what he wants to do with his running backs. We always talk about, the offensive line coach is in charge of the 5 guys, but he's also in charge of pass protection. He's also in charge of the tight end. So, and they got a great guy for that. He's passionate. You're going to see a physical offensive line, and hopefully they get some tight ends that can block, and then you get the running game going. So it's going to be interesting, but I'm excited. And it's glad that Josh is able to go to Australia, obviously give back to what he believes in, and then go into class. That's very important to him.
Absolutely, and we'll follow it along here on Cards Cover 2. All right, let's hear what the Bird Gang has to say here on this Wednesday afternoon using the hashtag CardsCover2, hashtag CardsCover2 with the number 2 to get involved in the show. The questions from fans, and we'll begin with Twitter. User wants to know, as a fan, the constant injuries on the offensive line have been incredibly frustrating. Do you believe the Cardinals will follow the Mason Cole route, meaning durable, in the draft/free agency versus more athletic linemen? And if so, would they prefer run blockers or pass blockers?
Well, you got to do both. I mean, you're not going to be 50-50 balance-wise. You're probably going to throw the ball 55% and maybe run it 45%. There's going to be games you're going to try to run it 30 or 40 times. We haven't got a chance to talk to Sean Kugler. Obviously, he's watching film, seeing who fits what he's looking for. So I'd be curious to see. But you got to get a guy that can do both. Yes, you prefer to run the ball because that means you're winning the line of scrimmage. But you also have to pass protect. That means Rosen's got to get rid of the ball. They got to protect him. They got to open up holes. So I think it's a combination. But once we get a chance to talk to the new offensive line coach, Sean Kugler, and maybe his assistant, we'll get a better idea of what they're focusing on when it comes to protection and running the football.
And health. Just look at the number of teams in the postseason, how healthy their offensive lines were and how many games they played together having all 5 starters.
Yeah, I mean, it's valuable. I mean, give Mason Cole a lot of credit. He was thrown into the mix when A.Q. Shipley Downey played every single snap, over 1,000 snaps. Now, Justin Pugh, unfortunately, has been on IR the last 2 years, one with the Giants, one with the Cardinals. DJ Humphries has to stay healthy. And then you're going to have openings at left guard. They're going to move on from Mike Upati. And then, right tackle right now, you got to think if Joe Barksdale's retained, he's an option. Otherwise, they're going to address that in free agency, if not even the draft.
Let's move to Instagram as we hear from the Bird Gang sounding off on social media. What is the biggest advantage for Coach Kingsbury to have Larry Fitzgerald back?
Oh, just a leadership. Just he can lean on Larry. They got a new wide receivers coach. We'll see who that is, but for the most part, his leadership in that, and they got a young groom, and they're going to draft another wide receiver or 2. They're going to bring in a free agent. So the more the merrier. The fact that he can rely on the wide receivers coach and Larry to work with these guys. He's just a great mentor. He leads by example. He really doesn't have to say a whole lot. Just follow Larry like a duck, and you'll learn a lot in one day.
Well, and if Larry's on board, which he would appear to be, agreeing to come back for one season, then that's a signal to everyone else in that locker room that you better get on board. Otherwise, you're not going to be long for here.
No, Larry likes numbers, money and targets, touches, and I think he's going to be targeted a little bit more than last year. I hope so, based on what happened last year. But yeah, in this offense, he should be able to fluctuate where he is as a wide receiver in that room.
One more from Instagram. What team would you say is the Cardinals' biggest rival?
Well, I always thought it was the Seahawks, but over the last couple of years, I think it's the Rams. I mean, you want to take a page from what the Rams are doing, and it's a copycat league. So from that standpoint, I would think it's the Rams because I think they're the team in the way, but I'm not falling asleep on the Niners. And as long as Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson are up there, and they got a really good running game now, the 3-headed monster, their defense doesn't look like they took a step back. So the entire NFC West, but I would say right now you got to somehow knock off the Rams if you want to get into the postseason.
And before we head on out of here on this Wednesday, late word in from our producer Jim Omohundro, who is supposed to be off on
he can't let go.
A brand new father, he and his wife with a new daughter. Yet Omo still always keeping the show in mind, and he has let us know here on Cards Cover 2 that he's actually not at the Phoenix Open, but according to Jim Omohundro, and I got no reason to not buy what Omo says, but a few minutes ago on the 16th hole, MJ, Patrick Peterson grabbed the microphone, addressed the crowd, said, quote, "I just want to apologize to everybody for asking for that trade in the middle of the season. I'm here to stay, baby."
Wow.
So he has rescinded his trade request.
That's awesome.
On the 16th hole at the Waste Management Phoenix Open.
Oh, that's awesome. And a lot of people are wondering, you hear so much about Antonio Brown, and I have no idea if the Steelers are going to trade him. Doesn't look good there. And then you wonder about Patrick. I think he was upset. Clearly, you're going to see a story on azcardinals.com from Kyle Odegaard. He was able to talk to Patrick today about he's really excited about this defense, and he felt like they took a step back last year. But he was frustrated, and a lot of times it comes down to just getting reassurance from the owner. And, I don't want to, get ahead of the article here, but Patrick has a relationship with Michael Bidwell, and I think it was important that he let him know what was going on last year and what he was looking for. Now, it's just a little bit of advice or suggestions. Ultimately, Michael Bidwell and Steve Keim and Cliff Kingsbury have to do what's best for this football team.
Yeah, we'll have much more this on Friday's show, and, of course, on azcardinals.com with Kyle Odegaard on that. And, of course, breaking news here on Cards Cover 2 from our producer, who is supposed to be on baby watch.
Now, I thought you were going to tell me you got a hole-in-one.
Oh, Patrick?
Yeah, it's 16.
No.
I mean, Larry got one. Now
but
Obama's not out there.
Isn't Fitz a better golfer?
No, Patrick is.
Who has a hole-in-one?
I don't know if Patrick's had one or two.
Oh, he has?
I don't know.
Okay.
Now,
we just stirred up the controversy here since they're both going to come back next season for it's official now. Both are going to be in uniform. We can have that debate.
They're both under contract. Patrick, he knows he knows his audience.
Absolutely.
You play to the audience.
No better place than the 16th hole.
Yeah, because they're half in the bag. Did he just say that? Yes. He rescinded.
Very well done.
Smart man.
Very well done. Good to hear from Patrick Peterson, as that is going to wrap up this edition here on Cards Cover 2. Special thanks to all those behind the scenes. Tim Delaney, yes, Jim Omohundro as well, plus Devin Henry, Jeremy Schnell, Brandon Natus, and Jackson Sipes. Again, if we did not get to your question here this afternoon, keep them coming. We'll do it again on Friday using the hashtag Cards Cover 2. For Mike Jurecki, I'm Craig Grialou. We'll talk to you on Friday. Super Bowl preview coming up on Friday's edition. This has been Cards Cover 2.